I hand wrote emergency on it and handed it right back to her. It was an emergency then. Judge Mera treated it like an emergency then. We got right into court after I got laughed at by the clerk. But if you go back to docket entry number 1 on the CVRA case, there's handwritten emergency, and that's how that happened. From that day, we've treated that like an emergency. It's taken a really, really, really long time to get here, but now we're past the sideshow of what was allegations Jeffrey Epstein made against me, that he's now said were categorically false. We can focus now back on the people that we care about who need our help. That's our clients.
And so where do you go now? Where's the pursuit now to be taken with the victims?
So step number 1 is we have filed our motion for summary judgment. If anyone is interested, you go to that case, 08-80736. It's docket entry 361. It lays out all the details you need. Judge Mera should rule on this at any moment, and I have a feeling that Mr. Scarola's entry of an appearance in this case, one of the first things that we are going to do is attempt to set a hearing. A hearing that I bet you, before today, we would have had 2 victims attend and scheduled. And after today, we're going to have a volume of victims that are going to come forward and be ready to testify and not get cross-examined. Testify about what happened to them in a way that will help them heal. Yes. And look, who knows what else is going to come out. I mean, the excellent journalism has spread the message. It's not just a state court case that's stuck in Palm Beach County now. People are really aware of what's going on. And there were times where people were aware, but were also scared to do something about it. So everybody's coming forward, and it feels like a
Is it possible for Epstein to just keep something out of court to keep the information from becoming public?
Well, it's not possible for the information not to become public, because the information is becoming very public. And if you really dig into all of the public court filings, as I've been filing and Mr. Scarola has been filing for the last 10 years, you can find most of anything that you're looking for, whether he likes it or not. And I'll tell you, for the most part, he does not.
Yeah.
Should Jeffrey Epstein be frightened?
Jeffrey Epstein is not an unintelligent person. It would take a fool not to recognize that he faces extremely serious jeopardy at this point. He faces the distinct possibility that his sweetheart plea bargain can get set aside and that he and others will face federal criminal prosecution. There was a development this morning. I'm not aware of the complete details. It's been reported to me secondhand, but apparently an effort is being made in Congress to open an investigation with regard to the circumstances of how this plea bargain could possibly have been entered into. I practiced law for over 45 years. The first 5 of those years were spent as a criminal prosecutor. I have never seen, I have never heard of a plea bargain in which not only the prospective defendant, but the defendant's named and unnamed co-conspirators were granted blanket immunity for unnamed crimes. That just doesn't happen. That's inexcusable. There is no reasonable justification, regardless of what kind of evidence Jeffrey Epstein may have been secretly providing to some other prosecuting authority. There is no justification for keeping this deal secret, for violating the Crime Victims' Rights Act that affords victims an opportunity to be able to address the court before any plea bargain is approved by a judge, and there is absolutely no justification for the broad scope of immunity that was granted in this case. That is deserving of the kind of scrutiny that Julie Brown began to focus on this case, and that hopefully the U.S. Congress will focus on this case as well. They can get answers that we can't get. So we're counting on that development as being very significant in terms of being able to ultimately bring Jeffrey Epstein to justice.
Mr. Scarola, can I ask how today's settlement and what you're hoping
this settlement is not going to have a direct impact on any other pending investigation. You will have a direct impact on other pending investigations. Your demanding answers, as you have begun to demand, will make the difference. So, while Brad deserves a great deal of credit for his tenacity in having seen this through to conclusion, as he's pointed out, this was a case that focused upon his personal vindication. The case that focuses on the vindication of victims is the Crime Victims' Rights Act case, and you can be absolutely sure that we're not abandoning that effort. That effort is going to be renewed and invigorated by what has happened up to this point in time. The decks have been cleared to enable us to focus our attention on that matter without distraction.
Have any victims stepped forward post the agreement?
Yes, go ahead.
The answer to that is yes, but well before that, when you say step forward, we learned over the years about victims all over the country and in other parts of the world, and talked to them, and they've all been scared. And one of the main reasons they've been scared is because of the way that the media covers or has covered and has labeled specifically Jeffrey Epstein's victims from the very beginning. I don't know if everybody remembers, but back in 2008, the charge they allowed Jeffrey Epstein to plead to was soliciting a minor for prostitution. All of a sudden, if you came forward knowing that you were a 13 or 14-year-old girl who had never engaged in prostitution in your entire life, you were born with that label if you were to stand up. And it's only very recently, as the climate has changed, that I've heard from some of these people that we recognized as witnesses a long time ago and promised them, if you don't want to be involved, I'm not going to get you involved. That's just my promise to you. Not going to do it to you. I've heard from them, and they've said, look, we're really thinking about it now because things have changed. The focus is on the right person, and there's nobody that looks at these circumstances who would ever use some derogatory term to speak about these young women. And some of these young women are very, very, very successful people these days, which is scary to come forward, but also putting them on the verge, on the edge of making that jump, which would also be a big, big step, big advancement in the case.
So more victims are they willing to file new charges that could possibly bring a criminal complaint outside of the plea agreement with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, the first thing, though, is even if we were to win on the Crime Victims' Rights Act case, which our feeling is we should, if we invalidate that immunity deal, that doesn't mean the U.S. Attorney's Office has to charge him. They could enter into the same deal. It just means that they would have to speak with the victims first and actually afford them rights this time. They have prosecutorial discretion. But the focus of attention on this is going to make it more difficult for the government to want anything but an appropriate prosecution. Okay, that's all that we can do. We can't, let's say new victims come forward. Let's say it's in California. There would still need to be a prosecutor in California that wants to prosecute this case. And everybody can go around asking, why is it that nobody, no U.S. Attorney's Office has ever wanted to prosecute what looks like a very, very strong case against a very powerful political person? I don't have that answer for you, but hopefully somebody here can go get it.
And one of the things that you need to understand as well is the very practical consideration that we are dealing in Florida with a restrictive statute of limitations. It would be very difficult at this point, if not impossible, to bring criminal charges arising out of conduct that occurred more than a decade ago. There are jurisdictions where that problem is not faced, but Florida is a jurisdiction where we face statute of limitations concerns. However, there very well could be the possibility of prosecution at the federal level based upon the illegal plea bargain that was entered into.
Do you think Secretary Acosta should resign?
We have not yet heard the rest of the story with regard to Secretary Acosta. He certainly hasn't spoken. I am hopeful that the congressional investigation that is being spoken of takes place. We will get more of the story at that point in time. I'm not here to call for Secretary Acosta's resignation. I don't know all the facts. I know that the facts that are known demand further answers.
What are the precedents for a non-prosecution agreement like this legally, and are there legal precedents that undo something?
There is no precedent for a non-prosecution agreement like this. I am completely unaware of any non-prosecution agreement extending immunity to unnamed co-conspirators for unidentified crimes. I am entirely unaware of secrecy having been expressly bargained for in violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act. One of the things that encourages us about the possibility of setting aside this plea bargain is that it was indeed Jeffrey Epstein and his dream team of high-powered, high-priced lawyers who insisted upon the secrecy provisions in violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act. That puts Epstein in a position where it becomes difficult, if not impossible, for him to argue, I want to enforce a contract that I required have provisions that were violative of the Crime Victims' Rights Act included in the contract. The contract was illegal from the outset. He knew it was illegal from the outset. It needs to be set aside. We need to start from the beginning with regard to the issues with respect to that prosecution.
So you're saying that the Fed, if they decided to file charges of statute of limitations,
I am saying that there's a very good argument that no statute of limitations applies with regard to federal charges.
Can you kind of compare him to like Harvey Weinstein, and you know, this is part of the reason perhaps some of these women came forward. Can you just discuss the correlation somewhat?
You want to take this?
Sure. There are some similarities, different age group targeted victims, but there are some similarities. And the most striking is the degree of power. I mean, you saw it first with Cosby, and people thought nobody's going to believe me. This guy is, you know, he's the pudding pop man. And then you have Harvey Weinstein. He's basically running Hollywood, and that's somebody who Jeffrey Epstein knows. You know, those are people that know one another, and they run in the same circles. And once the victims started coming forward one after another, how many times, even after 5, 6, 7 victims of Harvey Weinstein had come forward, were there still doubters? It wasn't until there were so many that Harvey Weinstein himself just couldn't take on the barrage of complaints that everybody said, you know what, that's right. So the victims here see the same thing. You know, as the numbers increase and as the skepticism decreases, and as we have a day like today where Jeffrey Epstein has admitted to wrongdoing, it's only going to increase the confidence of these young women who are now further along in their healing process than they were 10 years ago when we met them. So the chances of this moving in the right direction and having a situation like we had in a courtroom where you saw Larry Nassar and had to face one Olympic gymnast after another, after another, after another, that day should come, and that day will come.
I disagree with Brad with regard to one significant point. These high-profile abusers are not running in the same circles. They are slithering in the same circles. They are crawling in the same circles. And there is no more running because there is no more place to hide.
Thank you for your work.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you all so very much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you all being here. Jack and I both really appreciate the time and effort all of you have put into just getting to the truth of the matter. Thank you very much.
Julie, before you, where did
My
you
name's
go?
Derek. You know
Julie?
me from Houston. I sent you my documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein.
Can you
Oh,
come
yeah?
up
I don't
here?
know if you guys actually
No.
tried to call you or office a couple times to interview you for it. But
Really?
Is there any way I can get a card from you?
Sure.
I'd love to send you a copy of the documentary if you haven't seen it. They actually timed it out. It came out November 1st, and it seemed to
I would
coincide
like you to.
perfectly with the Herald's
You
investigation.
deserve
But,
the
again, thank
gratitude
you.
and the recognition. Okay.
But thank you.
All right. You are welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right, guys. Jeffrey Epstein's vehicles right here. These are boxes of case files right here. All these relate to the case against Jeffrey Epstein. There's his vehicles. You can see every one of the vehicles that Jeffrey Epstein owns. You can see planes, houses. So let me go ahead and give a recap real quick. Alright everybody, so it is Tuesday morning and I'm here in Palm Beach County. I'm just outside of the courthouse. Thanks to Activist Post, Mind Unleashed, Mint Press News, Lori, Stacy, Sea Visions, and everybody else who supported me. I came out here, flew out from Houston last night. I got here at midnight, woke up, caught an hour train, caught 2 Ubers, grabbed some breakfast, and headed into the courthouse only to find out that Jeffrey Epstein had settled out of court. And of course, that's what I said was going to happen. For those of you who have seen our documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, I said I suspect that he will likely settle out of court or threaten people, and that's kind of what happened. He did release an official statement where he said, my bad, I didn't mean to defame the character of the lawyer by calling him a liar and say he was running a Ponzi scheme. So just think about this. This dude just gets to commit whatever crimes he wants. He's got so much money, he can just go hide away on his private island, and he can just pay off anybody who brings up charges of what he's done, or he can just issue an apology and say, my bad, I'm sorry, please forgive me, while he's hiding out on his private island. So if you couldn't hear what they were saying at the press conference, which I do have video and better audio of and I will be putting up later, basically he apologized. This case is closed, but there's still the ongoing federal matter of whether or not a judge will overturn the non-prosecution agreement which Jeffrey Epstein signed, and so did his co-conspirators sign, without the knowledge of his victims. And so there's still a chance that that could get overturned and Jeffrey Epstein could face another federal trial. And if you heard these guys, they have victims all around the world. I'm so surprised that this is even getting reported by the mainstream press, but even if they try to ignore it, thanks to you guys, everybody who's been sharing our documentary Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, they cannot hide the fact anymore. Jeffrey Epstein is connected to powerful people in politics and all sorts of industries, and they are raping young girls. They are molesting young girls, and they have been for at least 20, 30 plus years, and many of them may face justice. Hopefully more of these women will come out and speak. We'll find out, but I'm going to go over here and try to get an interview with Bradley Edwards, the lawyer, get some more video and some more shots. Thank you so much to everybody who's been supporting me. If you want to support our work, go to patreon.com/DerekBros. Damon, please, when I wrap this up, go ahead and upload it to YouTube so they can see it over there. And I'll be working on an article this afternoon. And if anybody wants to contribute to my fund to get home, that'd be cool, because I was planning on staying here till Friday, but now there's no more case, so I don't really have any reason to be in Palm Beach. So either come hang out with me or help me get home. Thank you guys so much. Remember, you're powerful, you're beautiful, you're free, and Jeffrey Epstein's going down.